Good morning and happy Monday. Welcome back to Kibbley Kids Cozy Corner. This is episode 18. We just started on Friday. We started Matilda. Sorry, my dog is all of a sudden wanting to get attention right when I hit record. So let's get started with a pledge real quick and our motto, and then let's get into Matilda, shall we? Pledge, or salute and pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And let me put my dog down because he's in the way a little bit. And let's get over here to our motto. And here we go. Begin. We are students at Peter J. Shields. We believe in kindness. We are responsible. We are persistent. We are respectful. We are bucket fillers. We drop acts of kindness into everything we do. We are Peter J. Shields. And see, there's where I put little Nemo for now. Can you see him? Nemo. Hey, buddy. So let's get started. So on Friday, while I get myself situated and get my little doggy up here, we started, come here, buddy. Oh my gosh, you're so big and heavy. We started Matilda, and I told you about her principal, the Trunchbull. Oh my gosh, and we started reading. Matilda chapters are longer than James the Giant Peach chapters, and they are also not numbered. They have titles with words, but I will talk numbers. I wrote the numbers in the book too, so I could kind of speak with that, but we did not even finish our introductory chapter with Matilda. So let's get started. You can get down, buddy? Oh, there you go. Why don't you lay down right here? Lay down, baby. Alrighty. Apparently, the lap isn't as comfortable as the chair was for him, so here we go. All right, if you remember, oh my gosh, Matilda had gone through all the kids' books. She had gone through all these adult books. Some of them were a little confusing to her, but she enjoyed them nonetheless. And the librarian was just like blown away. Mrs. Phelps was just going, oh my gosh. So when we left off, she was talking about how she liked Mr. Hemingway. She didn't understand everything. And so this is what Mrs. Phelps's response is to Matilda. She says, well, a fine writer will always make you feel that, Mrs. Phelps said. And don't worry about the bits you can't understand. Sit back and allow the words to wash around you like music. And I thought that was great advice just for anything, because sometimes I know for the littler kiddos at our school right now, you're not ready to read this book yet by yourself, but it's still great to just listen to it and just let all the words just go in to your brains and just connect. She says, I will. Did you know, Mrs. Phelps said, that public libraries like this allow you to borrow books and take them home? I didn't know that, Matilda said. Could I do that? Well, of course, Mrs. Phelps said. And when you've chosen a book you want, bring it to me so I can make a note of it, and it'll be yours for 2 weeks. And you can take more than one if you wish. From then on, Matilda would visit the library only once a week in order to take out new books and return the old ones. Her own small bedroom now became her reading room, and there she would sit and read most afternoons, often with a mug of hot chocolate beside her. She was not quite tall enough to reach things around the kitchen, but she kept a small box in the outhouse, which she brought in and stood in order to get whatever she wanted. Mostly it was hot chocolate she made, warming the milk in a saucepan on the stove before mixing it. Occasionally she made Bovril, I don't know what that is, or Ovaltine, I know what that is. It wasn't pleasant to take a hot drink up to her room and have it beside, it was pleasant to take a hot drink up to her room and have it beside her while she sat silently reading in an empty house in the afternoons. The books transported her to new worlds and introduced her to amazing people who lived exciting lives. She went on olden days sailing trips with Joseph Conrad. She went to Africa with Ernest Hemingway and India with Rudyard Kipling. She traveled all over the world while sitting in her little room in an English village. Chapter 2. Ooh, this is where we meet more about her dad. I'm going to turn this camera a little bit because it's a little off. Mr. Wormwood, the great car dealer. So that's her dad. This is Matilda's parents owned quite a nice house with 3 bedrooms upstairs, while on the ground floor there was a dining room, a living room, and a kitchen. Her father was a dealer in secondhand cars, and he seemed to do it pretty well. Sawdust, he would say proudly. Now, I want to remind you, you can't do these kinds of things to newer cars anymore. This wasn't as old, but let me double check when this was written. I want to say it was the 80s. Yep, 1988. So, written in 88, but probably 1970s is what I would say. It really kind of takes place according to my opinion of what I think about what he does with the car dealerships. So he said, sawdust, he would say proudly, it's one of the greatest secrets of my success. And it costs me nothing. I get it free from the sawmill. What do you use it for? Matilda asked. Ah, the father said, wouldn't you like to know? I just don't see how sawdust can help you sell secondhand cars, Daddy. That's because you're an ignorant little twit, the father said. His speech was never very delicate, but Matilda was used to it. She also knew that he liked to boast, and she would egg him on shamelessly. So boast like brag. Oh, you must be very clever to find a use for something that costs nothing, she would say. I wish I could do that. Well, you couldn't, the father said. You're too stupid, and I don't mind telling young Mike here about it, seeing he'll join me in the business one day. Ignoring Matilda, he turned to his son and said, I'm always glad to buy a car when some fool has been crashing the gears so badly they're all worn out and rattle like mad. I get it real cheap. Then, all I gotta do is mix in the sawdust with some oil, put it in the gearbox, and it runs sweet as a nut. How long will it run like that before it starts rattling again? Matilda would ask him. Long enough for the buyer to get a good distance away, the father would say, grinning. About 100 miles. But that's dishonest, Daddy, Matilda said. It's cheating. No one ever got rich being honest, he would say. Customers are there to be diddled with. Oh, Mr. Wormwood, he was a small, ratty-looking man whose front teeth stuck out underneath his thin, ratty mustache. He liked to wear jackets with large, brightly colored cheeks and sported checks, I can't read today. Large colored checks and sported ties that were usually yellow or pale green. Now, take mileage, for instance, he went on. Anyone who's buying a second-hand car, the first thing they want to know is how many miles are on it, right? Right, the son would say. So I buy an old dump that's got about 150,000 on the clock. I get it real cheap. But no one's going to buy it with mileage like that, are they? And these days, you can't just take the speedometer out and fiddle back the numbers like you used to. They fixed it so that's impossible to tamper with. Unless you're a Rudy watchmaker like me or something. So what do? I use my brains, laddie. That's what I do. How? Michael would ask, fascinated. He seemed to have inherited his father's love for crookery. I sit down and I say to myself, how can I convert the mileage reading from 150,000 to only 10,000 without taking the speedometer to pieces? Well, if I were to run the car backwards for long enough, then obviously that would do it. The numbers would click backwards, wouldn't they? But who's going to drive a flaming car in reverse for thousands and thousands of miles? You just couldn't do it. Well, of course you couldn't, said young Michael. So I scratched my head. I use my brains. When you've been given a fine brain like I have, you've got to use it. And all of a sudden, the answer hits me, I tell ya. I feel exactly like the other brilliant fellow must have felt when he discovered penicillin. Eureka, I cried out. I've got it. What did you do, Dad? The son asked. The speedometer, Mr. Wormwood said, is run off a cable that is coupled to one of the front wheels. So first, I disconnect the cable where it joins the front wheel. Next, I get one of those high-speed electric drills, and I couple it up to the end of the cable in such a way that when the drill turns, it turns the cable backwards. You got me so far? Are you following me, son? Oh, yes, Daddy, the young Michael said. These drills run at tremendous speed, the father said. So when I switch on the drill, the mileage numbers on the speedo spin backwards at a fantastic rate. I can knock off 50,000 miles off the clock in a few minutes with high-speed electric drill, and by the time I finish, the car's only done 10,000, and it's ready for sale. She's almost new, I'd say to the customers. She's hardly been done 10,000. Belonged to an old lady who only used it once a week for shopping, I'd say. Can you really turn back the mileage with an electric drill? Young Michael asked. I'm telling you trade secrets, the father said, so don't you go talking this up to anyone else. You don't want me to put in the jug, do you? Oh, I won't tell a soul, the boy said. Do you do this to many cars, Dad? Every single one that comes through my hands get this kind of treatment, the father said. They all have their mileage cut to under 10,000 before they're offered for sale. And to think I invented that all by myself, he'd said proudly. It's made me a mint. Matilda, who had been listening closely, said, But Daddy, that's even more dishonest than the sawdust. It's disgusting. You're cheating people who trust you. Well, if you don't like it, then don't eat the food in this house, the father said. It's bought with the profits. Well, it's dirty money, and I hate it, Matilda said. Remember, she's 4. 4. 2 red spots appears on the father's cheeks. Who the heck do you think you are? He'd shouted. The Archbishop of Canterbury or something? Preaching to me about honesty. You're just an ignorant little squirt who hasn't the foggiest idea what you're talking about. Quite right, Harry, the mother said. And to Matilda she said, you've got nerve talking to your father like that. Now keep your nasty mouth shut so we can all watch this program in peace. They were sit in the living room, eating their suppers on their knees in front of the telly. The suppers were TV dinners in floppy aluminum containers with separate compartments for stewed meat, boiled potatoes, and peas. Mrs. Wormwood sat there munching on her meal with her eyes glued to the American soap opera on the screen. Now remember, they're in Great Britain, so this is taking place there. She was a large woman whose hair was dyed platinum blonde, except where you could see the mousy brown bits growing up from her roots. She wore heavy makeup, and she had one of those unfortunate bulging figures where flesh appears to be strapped all around the body, preventing it from falling out. So here they all are. And TV dinners are like microwave dinners today, but if you go Google images, I'm sure you can find like 1980s TV dinners or 1970s, because that's what I had a couple of times when I was a kid. I'd get a special treat, one with a brownie in it. I loved it. So aluminum pan, and you had to cook in the oven, not the microwave. I didn't get a microwave till we were about 10, so, or I was about 10, so they had them. We just didn't have one. Mummy, Matilda said, would you mind if I eat my supper in the dining room so I can read my book? The father glanced up sharply. I would mind, he snapped. Supper is a family gathering, and no one leaves this table till it's over. But we're not at the table, Matilda said. We never are. We're always eating off our knees and watching the telly. What's wrong with the telly? May I ask, the father said. His voice had suddenly become soft and dangerous. Matilda didn't trust herself to answer, so she just kept quiet. She could feel the anger boiling up inside her, and she knew it was wrong to hate her parents like this, but she was finding it very hard not to do so. All the reading she had done had given her a view of life that they had never seen. If only they would read a little Dickens or Kipling, they would soon discover that there was more to life than cheating people and watching television. Another thing she resented was being told constantly that she was ignorant and stupid, and when she knew she wasn't. The anger inside her went on boiling and boiling as she lay in bed that night. She made a decision. She decided that every time her father or mother was beastly to her, she would get back in her own way some way or another. A small victory would help her to tolerate their idiocies and stop her from going crazy. You must remember, she was now hardly 5 years old, and it is not easy for someone that small to score points against an all-powerful grown-up. Even so, she was determined to have a go at it. Her father, after what happened in front of the telly that evening, was first on her list. And we actually got through chapter 2. Perfect timing. I'm going to show you really quickly. So their television was just a small television, and I found this picture of an old television I got, when I was a junior in high school. We finally got cable in our main living room. But sometimes, I was 16, so I wanted to go to my room and watch television. So my parents got me this little 13-inch television, and 1984. And it was in my bedroom, and I had to have an antenna on it, no cable, just the basic channels, but at least it got me something. And it finally died. Oh, I couldn't believe it. I took it around. It was my bedroom TV until 10 years ago, till 2010. And this is a picture of it that I found that I printed. So the screen, this was the little receiver for a remote, so I did have a little baby remote with it. It was a Sharp brand. It was called the Sparky. That was a power button if I didn't have the remote. When they measure a screen, they talk about inches, they go diagonally, either this way or that way. That was a 13-inch screen. That was a big deal in 1984 to have that in my bedroom, my junior year of high school. So anyway, a little extra history lesson for you guys. Have a great Monday, and I will see you back here tomorrow, and we will continue and see what Matilda has planned for her father, Mr. Wormwood. Have a great day. Thanks for tuning in. I love you and miss you guys so much, and we as educators cannot wait till we can touch base again. We just don't know when that will be. So hang in there, kiddos, and be safe. Bye.